Good morning, people. Mr. K here with another episode of Deep Within. Hope everybody's doing okay. And I hope today my subject will be as interesting as the previous ones. Well, today I'll be I'll be actually brushing on Genesis chapter 3. And the reason I'll be doing so is because I believe there's a lot of in Genesis chapter 3 that people seem to overlook as far as what we should know, things that we should actually know and see and understand for what it is, and without the whole people trying to interpret and putting their own meaning into it, just you reading and understanding exactly what you've read. Okay, so let's get right into it and see exactly what Genesis chapter 3 is saying and what we might have missed. Now, in Genesis chapter 3, we all know it talks about the fall of man and, in the Garden of Eden. First thing I want to debunk is the fact that you hear most of the time the devil or Satan or Lucifer somehow disguised itself as the serpent and caused Adam and Eve to sin. But the chapter itself does not provide that evidence. It does not provide anything to support that fact. So let's read. And it says, "Now the serpent was the more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, 'Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?'" Again, here we're talking about the serpent. I'm not going to put interpretation to it. The verse does not say it was something disguised as the serpent. It says the serpent was the most crafty animals or animal from all the animals that God had made. And in verse 2, the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die." In verse 4, the serpent then answers and said, "You will not certainly die." The serpent said to the woman, "For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So here's the first, clue in the chapter, and it's in verse 4. You need to understand, first of all, for you to even be like God, you need to have clear understanding of good and evil. Because the serpent is saying here, the moment you eat, you will be unto like God, knowing good and evil. That's the first clue of the day. And in that's chapter 4, 5. And so now in 6, it says, "When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom." Here's another clue here. For gaining wisdom, which means prior to eating that fruit, Adam and Eve could not have wisdom or have obtained wisdom. For you can only have wisdom when you have eaten from the fruit from the tree. So basically now you understand that, even though they probably it'll take them longer to eat from that tree if the serpent did not come and say it to her, but at some point they would naturally eat from it, because if they really want to have wisdom, then it would be very important for them to eat from the tree. And now my question is, again, that's my personal, standpoint, because I don't want to think for people or speak for people. Why would God create a being and want to withhold wisdom and information from that being? So you place them in the garden with no wisdom, and you tell them and you forbid them not to eat from the tree of knowledge, which means Adam and Eve would just be ignorant with no knowledge whatsoever. So what was the purpose? What was the plan? Why did this God or this being not intend for, Adam and Eve to have acquired or have knowledge? So that's the first question here. Let's read on and see. She took some and she ate. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized that they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Here's a second clue, and a very important one at that. The moment they ate the fruit, their eyes opened. So the whole time they were living in the garden prior to eating the fruit, what were they experiencing really? So now you got to ask questions. Again, like I said, I'm not trying to attack or, come at anybody's faith, but you need to have, answers. You need to ask questions. And in verse 8, then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord God, and he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And they hid from the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called to the man, "Where are you?" Now here's another question I have. Again, it's my personal, standpoint. Why would a God who's somehow omniscient, omnipotent, who can see all, knows all, be calling a man who's hiding behind a tree, as if he can't even see Adam? If you're supposed to be able to see all, know all, and be everywhere simultaneously, why are you calling a man that's hidden behind a tree, as if you can't see him? Question mark. That's my question, right? And in verse 10, he answered, "I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." And again, see the term here, terminology, "I hid," which means he was hiding purposely from God. And God somehow couldn't see him, and he was calling for him. Question mark again. And in verse 11, he said, "And he said, 'Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?'" So here in verse 11, you can realize that this being, this entity, this God, he was really counting on the fact that Adam and Eve would never eat from the tree and would never have acquired knowledge. Because he knew well that the moment they ate from the tree, they would have understanding that they were naked. And the moment Adam said, "I heard you and I know I was naked," now he's asking, "Did you eat from the tree?" Which means he already knows that, yes, the only way you can find out that you're naked is if you have eaten from the tree. Now, again, the question is, why would this God not want them to know that they were naked, or their condition for that matter? Question mark again. So in verse 12, the man said, "The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it." Then the Lord said in verse 13, God said to the woman, "What is this you have done?" The woman said, "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." But here in this particular version, they use the word deceived, but in the original version of the King James Version, the word they use is beguiled, which means the serpent somehow used charm and enchantment to deceive Eve. Because you need to understand that, because that's why you would understand whatever's going to take place in the following, verses is sort of unfair. And then in 14, so the Lord God said to the serpent, "Because you've done this, cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl and on your belly, and you will eat dust all the days of your life. So now, are they suggesting that serpent used to walk before? Because if you're saying that now, because of this, you're going to crawl, so was there a kind of serpent that used to walk around before and that could talk? Because according to Genesis chapter 3, it was not telepathically that the serpent was talking to Eve. He was actually really talking to Eve. So are they implying that the serpent, there was a type of serpent on the planet before the fall of man that could speak, walk? Again, question mark. So let's continue and see. In verse 15, it says, "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." Now, you need to understand, wait a minute. Offspring, in the way that now this is being said, you would understand, yes, serpent can have, little snakes, but now you understand that the serpent was not more like a snake, it was more like a person. Because here they're talking about offspring. They're talking about, future generations. Future generations of the serpent and of Eve. Because that's what the verse is implying here. And in 16 it says, "To the woman," that's where now I think it's unfair, based on if you remember the word I said in King James Version they use here, it was not deceive, it was beguiled. The serpent beguiled me, it said, and I ate of the tree. Which when you look at the word, let's just quickly take a quick look here. And see. The word, it says, to actually use enchantment, to charm, to attract, interest someone or something, right? With the intention of deceiving them. But you need to understand, it's to charm, to attract. So which means Eve was actually powerless when it comes to, to this particular scenario here. Because Eve had no way of standing, up to the devil. Or the serpent, whatever mostly I hear, because they mostly, cross-reference the serpent to the devil, but there's nowhere in the book of Genesis where you actually see that. Okay? Because right now the book is still talking about a serpent, not a devil, not some sort of entity or being that, somehow is masquerading as a serpent. So now let's take a look at, see what verse 16 says. "Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee." Wait a minute here. So, are they saying that prior to Eve eating from the tree, her desire was not always to her husband? Because based on this particular verse here, it's now a curse that is being placed on her for her desire to be always to her husband. If that's the case, then I'm sort of lost, because I thought based on prior chapters in Genesis, Eve was created for the purpose of, Adam having a wife, and her desire was supposed to be all about Adam. So again, question mark. And then it goes on to give Adam, his punishment as well. But now, my question is, let's read on and we'll discuss this after. "And unto Adam he said, Because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns also and it shall bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground, for out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. Unto dust shalt thou return. Now we're going to come back to this verse. And Adam called his wife named Eve, because she was the mother of all living. Now again, we have a problem. It seems, according to this verse, the name Eve only becomes a factor after the fall of men. So how did we already know her name from the previous chapters? They had not sinned yet. Eve had not sinned yet. So how come she was called Eve from there? The woman was created, and Adam and Eve. Okay? Question mark again. Unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skins and clothe them. Now, here's my thing. If they sinned and they were naked and they weren't supposed to know that they were naked, and now they've sinned, and you cast them and give them such a hard punishment, right? Such a harsh punishment. Why do you even bother to, make coat for them? Okay? And based on my experience, we are made in the image of God, which means we also share attributes of God. I would not place such a harsh punishment on my daughter on a first mishap. Yeah, I'll be strict so that she doesn't repeat it, but I won't go to the full extent. Right from the first mishap, God went all out. There was no, let's just place a little something here so that he doesn't repeat this, but let's not be too harsh, because that's a man that's just been created. He's not experienced. He's not a full God yet. He doesn't know everything. Of course he's going to make mistakes. Of course she's going to make mistakes. So let's read on. And in verse 22, and the Lord God said, behold, the man is become as one of us. Again, that's what I was referring to in the other video. Now the God is saying the man has become like one of us. So now you need to understand, man no longer shares the title of man. Man has become a God. He's become like one of the gods. And God is clearly saying this now in verse 21. It says, and the Lord God said, behold, man has become one of us. So man is no longer man now. Adam is no longer, a man. Adam is now a God, because he ate from the tree of knowledge, good and evil, which qualifies any being of becoming a God. Because remember the serpent, that's why I wanted you to pay attention to the verse earlier. It said, the serpent said to Eve, God knows that the moment you eat from the tree, your eyes will be open and you will become like God, of knowledge of good and evil. So the moment they ate from the tree and had acquired knowledge of good and evil, they became like God. That's not me saying this. It's in Genesis chapter 3, verse 22. Verse 22 says, and the Lord God said, behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life, and eat and live forever. Because now that Adam and Eve had acquired knowledge, they are now very well aware of what the tree of life is, and they would definitely want to eat from the tree of life so they can live forever, because now they know they're not living in ignorance anymore. They're not in bliss state anymore. Now they're gods. They've acquired knowledge. They know. They're in the know now. They're not in the it's been done for me. As you can clearly see, God is saying that they're gonna have to do everything on their own. Nothing is gonna be done for them anymore. Because as a God, you do everything you have to do on your own. Nothing is done for you. Okay? And in verse 23, therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. Okay, so now based on this verse here, you need to understand Adam was not actually created in the Garden of Eden. He was placed there according to verse, I believe, chapter 2. He was placed there for God to somehow teach him and mold him into what they wanted him to be. But now he's been actually cast out to go back to the place where he was taken, according to verse 23. All right? So verse 24, so he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims and a flaming sword, which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. So it's not enough that he had to tell men, you can't come here and eat from the tree of life. He had to protect it, because now man had acquired knowledge. He'd become a god. He would definitely know how to get to the tree. So you can't just tell him not to eat anymore. Now you got to make sure you put in place, barriers for him not to come and eat from the tree of life, because now he knows what living eternally means. He would definitely want to eat from the tree of life. So therefore, as a God, we can't just tell him not to eat anymore. We have to make sure we put, barriers in place. We have to stop him by whatever means necessary. Okay, so that's what here you see, and it says cherubims and flaming sword. Now, like I said again before, I understand they've sinned. It's very, it's very bad, and it's a big mistake that they've, actually went against your word when you commanded them not to eat. But again, as a father, you have compassion. I have compassion. Why would I go full out extent on my daughter, or any father or any parent would go full out extent on their, children, just because they've made a mistake, and it's their first to begin with. It's not the second, it's not the third, it's not repeated offenses. It's just like one offense. They just went crazy for 1 minute, and it's the first mistake. So you need to understand that this chapter here has so many, hidden factors that you need to read it over and over to understand and ask questions. So we're going to cover this for today, but in this follow-up video, we're going to cover more, and we're going to go in depth into what the chapter is really saying. It's Mr. K. God is within. Go within, and he'll tell you all you need to know. Until then, take care. Have a blessed day.